Welcome to Your Infinite Health. Are you getting older?
Are you feeling it?
How would you like to do that in reverse?
We're your host,
Dr. Tripp
and Lene.
We've run an integrative medicine practice for 13 years.
Together, we have 60 years of combined experience helping clients.
We've helped tens of thousands achieve success in health and live longer, happier lives.
In this show, we'll cover peer-reviewed and evidence-based integrative approaches to creating the health you've always wanted.
We also share professional experience we see in the field every day.
So if you're ready to feel, look, and live your best life, you're in the right place.
Welcome to Your Infinite Health podcast.
Tripp, what are you doing this weekend?
Hey, not sure yet.
You're not sure? You don't know what you're doing this weekend? You're so presently minded. You don't know what's going on?
Yeah.
You're too much in the now, darling. So much in the now. Listener, we're going to get into that actually a little later. But so I bought tickets to go see Twisters. Pretty excited about that. You?
Oh yeah, that's going to be fun. That should be fun.
So I asked Huckleberry if he wanted to go to the movies because tickets are expensive. So I don't want to take a kid if he doesn't want to go. And he's like, nah, I can go or I can not go. It's up to you. So I was like, okay, well, then I guess you're going. So dragging the kids to a family thing to go see the movie. Hopefully it's not too crowded. But the theater here is pretty decent. Like it's like a small town theater, so it doesn't get too crowded, even on, premiere nights. You are not listening to me.
Yes.
Put the dog down, Tripp.
Trying to get the dog out the park.
Okay, well, since you're not participating in my conversation, I guess I'll ask you a joke. Or I'll tell you a joke, not ask you a joke. I'm going to tell you a joke. What did the drummer name his daughters? He had 2 daughters. What did he name them?
Not sure.
And a 1 and a 2.
Okay.
So clever. All right, listener, before I waste any more of your time, we have a guest on that you're going to love, going to learn so much about. It is the authors of the book on the origin of being. And so we had one author. We had Jenny Powers here. Her co-author, Luke Comer, was unable to participate, but I'm going to honor him and read his little bio anyway. So Jenny Powers is an accomplished writer, scientist, and athlete. She earned her PhD in microbiology and immunology from the University of Colorado, Denver. Her journey as a collegiate basketball player taught her to push physical boundaries, even as she continually expanded her intellectual horizons. She is deeply inspired by the exploration of human nature and the study of our ancestors. Her role in researching and co-authoring on The Origin of Being marks the culmination of this passion to date. Jenny balances her professional endeavors with her roles as a wife and mother in Colorado. And Luke is the visionary behind On the Origin of Being. He is an independent producer, writer, and director whose work ranges from scientific reductionism to imaginative spiritual explorations, aiming to identify and fulfill fundamental human needs unmet by modern society. For decades, he has studied human biological and cultural evolution, focusing on food, psychology, sociology, art, and even shamanism. After graduating from Oberlin College, Luke devoted 3 years of his life to leading therapeutic wilderness courses for adjudicated teenagers. Afterwards, he moved to Boulder, Colorado, starting the restaurant Native to support his rock climbing and skiing. In his late 20s, he experienced a healing and existential crisis and experimented with various modalities, including therapy, dance, yoga, psychedelics, raves, Burning Man, and even longer excursions into the wilderness. Afterwards, he devoted himself to generating content and published the novel Yoke of Wind. Created and produced the touring multimedia show called The Portal, and owned and produced Colorado's largest camping festival called Arise for around 15,000 people from 2013 to 2021, before being undone by law enforcement. When Luke comes on the show, we're going to have to ask him about that. He is the founder, director, and writer for the project still in development called The First Supper. He is one of the original investors in Meow Wolf and Electric Playhouse. And he also advocates for freedom of assembly in Colorado, supporting artistic and alternative cultures. Luke spends much of his time in the outdoors, pursuing various sports and attending camping festivals. All right, Jenny, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to chat with Dr. Goolsby and I.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you about our book.
Yeah, and so it remind me the name of the book, the
It's
origin.
on the origin of being. So we
Uh,
paid homage to Charles Darwin on that because his seminal book is on the origin of species. But then it's understanding the theory or understanding the science of evolution to enhance your quality of life.
Cool. Well, definitely want to jump into that, but before we get there, can you tell the listener how you and Luke became inspired, or what was your journey that led y'all to the creation of the book?
Yeah, well, I have a background, have a PhD in immunology. So I was kind of on the tenure track. I was working at National Jewish on rheumatoid arthritis induced lung fibrosis of all things. But I wanted to have kids and I wanted to kind of step off the academia track. And I'd always wanted to be a writer. So I stepped away from the bench work, and I actually started writing middle grade novels, which are 8 to 12-year-olds, fiction,
Oh,
science
like,
fiction, actually.
okay, so not like Judy Bloom.
No, no, not like Judy, well, same like age, but more science fiction, fantasy type stuff.
Oh, that's
And it was really cool because writing doesn't really pay very much, or if at all. And I was looking for something to do that I could be involved in the working world and interact with adults. So I was looking for a side job, and I applied to be a researcher for Luke Comer, who's researching a book on nutrition. And it was like, oh, this is perfect. I can do research. And the first thing he said when we got on the phone with the interview is that he'd already hired a nutritionist to help him. So I was like, oh man.
but he
But then
still
he
wanted
said,
you to interview.
yeah, but then he said, I think he liked, my background and, that I was a writer and a scientist. And he's like, but I have this idea kicking around in my head. And he's been holding this vision and this concept about how the environment we live in today is so different than the one that we evolved in. And it's changed so rapidly that we have not had time to evolve and adapt to the modern world. And so when he was working on his nutrition book, he found that there are other ways of being, other things in our lives that we're no longer living according to how we evolved to live because we have this environmental mismatch. And it sounded so fascinating to me. We talked for maybe 2.5 hours. I think we just
That's a
really
really
clicked.
long interview.
We clicked, yeah. And so he wanted me to research and write this book. And what really, I think, drew me in was the two aspects of this part of the book that really drew me in were the work aspects, because being, a graduate student, a postdoc, working 80-hour weeks, feeling like you had to have it all and do it all, that really burnt me out in my scientific career. And also, I loved the environment. I love being in nature. Colorado is just this beautiful place to be. And I was becoming more and more disconnected and, I don't know, sad about what was going on, how the environment's getting damaged and how we are part of nature, but it seems like people just don't care. So the work chapter and the nature chapter in this book were really I really loved doing those. So I was on board completely. And so that was probably about 5 years ago. And then COVID happened
Hmm.
and we finished up the book, but then we just didn't really do anything with it until everything kind of calmed down. And then this past year we hybrid published it, and it came out at the end of June.
Okay. Well, awesome. And so where is it, on Amazon or how?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can find it there. I think it's on Barnes and Noble. We have a couple of independent bookstores who are carrying it, or who you can order through if you prefer to do independent bookstores. And so Yeah, if they go to our website, there's a link to it right there, and that's how you get it.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go a bit deeper into, the content of the book and like, because you're talking about sleep and you're talking about nutrition. Can you go a little bit deeper into like ancestors? How far back are we talking? Like cave people or?
We're talking about the very beginning of life, because there are a lot of traits that actually appeared in the very, very earliest life on Earth. For instance, circadian rhythms. The cyanobacteria in the ocean needed to know when was the best time to get nutrients, when was the best time to do photosynthesis, when was the best time to undergo cell division. So, the best time to undergo photosynthesis is when the sun's up, right? But the best time to undergo cell division and replication is not when the sun's up, because now you're going to get UV damage and it might not be the best, you might get a mutation and stuff. So they evolved circadian, very, very rudimentary circadian rhythms to know when to come up and go down and come up and go down to do various things throughout the cycle of the day and night. So, a lot of these things we actually take all the way back to the beginning of like single cells, and then we trace it through higher order organisms, eukaryotes, multicellular organisms, mammals, and we pay special, we go through that sort of quickly. We don't spend a lot of time on, we just touch on some of the similarities and some of the trends we're seeing, and then we spend a lot of time on primates and the human lineage especially, and then we devote like a whole chapter to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. So anything from about 200,000 years ago to about 12,000 years ago, when the agricultural revolution started. So, and then of course we talk about, we kind of take people on this evolutionary journey, and we talk about how our ancestors lived, especially our hunter-gatherer ancestors, because they were Homo sapiens. And by the time we get to the chapter on the modern, how the modern world or how modern people are dealing with this particular topic, I'm hoping that people already know, like, I know what's wrong. I know what's wrong. They can tell that there's this mismatch between our behaviors when we were evolving and when we lived very stably as hunter-gatherers. I mean, it was a very stable adaptation. So our bodies are really attuned to that lifestyle. So then we get into modern humans, how modernity kind of disrupts these patterns of behavior and what are the consequences of those. And then we talk about what are the things that people can start trying to do to, we don't want to go back and live 12,000 years ago. We want to be in this modern world, but we want to change our behaviors in order to be more aligned with our biology. Because I think, I like to kind of say we're still running hunter-gatherer software for the most part, but there haven't been really any major evolutionary changes, especially not in the last 100 years, when I feel like the speed of change and technology just took off. We have not really had, we're not adapted to eat that much refined sugar. We're not adapted to look at screens. We're not adapted to sit in a chair and work all day. So hopefully people, by understanding kind of where we came from and how we evolved into, the way we evolved, it'll be easier for them to be like, oh, well, that's why I don't want blue light, at night. That's why I need to get sunlight in the morning. So hopefully we want this to kind of be a self-help book to help people learn and make better decisions for their health and wellness that actually will stick, because they understand like the science behind it.
That's cool. What are you calling twilight existence?
Okay, yeah, so that is in our sleep chapter. So our hunter-gatherer ancestors obviously had no electricity. The only light they had was sunlight, moonlight, and firelight. So in the mornings, when they woke up at the same time pretty much every day, they were out in nature and they were exposed to very bright sunlight. So if you look at the intensity of the light, spikes really high in the morning, and then it kind of changes and goes away. And then at night, there's just no light at all.
Mm-hmm.
But a twilight existence, when we get up, we turn our lights on and we kind of have this same basal level of light. We never get that really sharp peak at night, or sorry, at the very beginning of the morning. And then the sun goes down and we still have the same level of light. We're just, we're using our overhead lights or whatever. And we're here, and the hunter-gatherer light exposure is way down here. So we're kind of just, we never get the high highs, we never get the low lows. So that's why it's twilight. It's not full sun, it's not full dark. It's always just in that between area.
How does somebody today like combat that or reverse that? Like,
Yeah, well, that's
intentionally have to get up and go outside? Like, what do
yeah, that's a really good question. So I think, the first thing is you can do two things at once. Get outside in the morning. That is a great time for you to connect with nature, which is important. That's a good time for you to exercise, move your body, which is really important. But get that, every morning, have some part of your day be outside getting that bright sunlight, even if just for 10 minutes. The sunlight will really, really, help. It'll help you wake up. It'll help set your circadian rhythms. And then at night, this is probably the most important thing. Somebody, I can't remember the name of him right at the moment, but he classifies blue light as a carcinogen. And he
Oh,
said that people need to realize that the blue light that we continuously have after the sun goes down is really screwing up kind of the regulation of our hormone production. And so things that normally regulate on, to keep us in homeostasis, it would, our hormone are way out of sync because we're getting mixed signals. Like, is it dark? Is it light? Do I need to make cortisol? Do I need to make melatonin? What are things looking like? So the decreasing blue light at night is probably the number one thing to do. And I know people are not going to want to give up their screens, but the wisdom is to not look at a screen an hour before bedtime. But also there's so many technological things. Like I have these blue light blocking glasses.
oh,
So
those are cool.
yeah, I mean, they're all over the market. These are really old. I'm sure they are because they just clip on my glasses. But I also find that I don't need these very often because most devices these days have like a night shift. So they actually change the colors that are coming at you. And so it's really easy to just like, okay, at 4 o'clock every day, all of my devices turn to night shift or red shift or whatever, the device calls it. And then you can still see things and have things, but you're not stimulating, the mechanisms to be like, okay, the sun's still up. It's not time to make melatonin yet. Or it delays the melatonin production. So those are probably the two, sunlight in the morning, less blue light at night are kind of the two things you can do on the ends of your day. So you won't have that twilight existence. You can more mimic that high intensity light in the morning and not intense light in the evenings if you do those things.
Oh, and those are very simple, easy to implement changes, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I've started doing them and it really helps. I know you have dogs. It helps to have dogs because
Oh my
they're the
God.
perfect
Well,
reason to go
I
walking.
don't know. I don't know.
Uh-oh.
Those dogs, man,
Open the can of worms.
you're right. They don't know when it's Saturday is the problem.
That's very true. Yeah, they're quite set in their ways. They want their walk in the morning for sure.
Yeah, they do.
What I really like about this perspective is the fact that it actually is stimulating, like you say, the homeostasis and our biology to actually repair and create an environment in the body that is healthier so that we're not creating, all of those zombie cells, the welfare cells, as I call them, creating the adversarial environment biologically that causes, or actually is the cause of cellular aging and disease processes. I think this is the way that medicine can prevent the astronomical costs of pharmaceuticals and the healthcare system as it exists today.
Yeah, I totally agree. People think that if you talk about hunter-gatherers, they think like, oh, they had these brutal lives and they didn't have medicine. But yeah, they didn't live in a world where they had a lot of childhood mortality. They didn't have the ways to combat bacterial infections and things like that. But the people who actually survived into adulthood lived well into their 70s. So they're so the people, if you only take the people who kind of got into adulthood, they have a very similar life expectancy to our modern day humans. But what's amazing is, so it's like 70, I don't know, depending on where you look, 76 to 78 is the modern life expectancy. But from about 60 to 65 on, how good is your health and wellness in the last years of your life, right? Most people who have these non-communicable diseases of modernity do not necessarily have this robust, healthy, last 15 years of life. Whereas in the hunter-gatherer tribe, the older people had big positions, had important positions in the group, and they were active, and they didn't die of heart disease, they didn't die of cancer, they didn't die of diabetes, they didn't even get any of those things. So the last 15 years of their life were served kind of, as their midlife, that they were as healthy and had the capacities of somebody much in our culture. It's when you hit 65, everyone just expects to have these diseases. And it's really, that's a totally modern convention that started happening once we stopped kind of living in the way that our bodies need us to live.
A modern medical paradigm.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
you think
Medical
about
paradigm.
the retirement age and retirement. And so people, maybe they lack purpose and productivity, retire.
Right.
So how did the hunter gatherers die? They lived to 75 and then they got eaten by something? Like,
No, I mean,
how did that work?
well, what's cool is, so this is the first book in a 3-book series, and we actually talk about, in the last book, it's kind of, the first book's basic needs, the second book's social needs, child rearing, the sexes, social groups, and then the last book talks about more cultural needs, and we talk about how hunter gatherers approach death. So that, I was like, oh, that's a really good question, but maybe we should wait and talk about that book then, just because I mean, just to touch on it, I'm sure you're familiar with this. Like, today, death has become something that happens behind closed doors. You do everything you can to help somebody die longer so they stay alive longer, maybe in really bad health. And they're usually in some sterile hospital room with nobody around. And that was totally, it wasn't like that when a hunter gatherer died. They were at home, they were surrounded by their loved ones, and there was so much ceremony and ritual around that it really like meant something. And there's a lot of people, a lot of tribes and groups who are like, they have a really rich culture and belief in the ancestors being able to be contacted and to look over the tribe and things like that. So it just had such a different place in life. Death had a place in life. They were used to death because it could happen at any time. They could get eaten, by an animal, or even just like, get a bad cut and have a bacterial infection and not be able to survive that. But I think the way that people approach death nowadays versus back then, I think we could learn a lot from them too. So
Yeah. Yeah. I like the way you described it. I think,
Yeah.
you think hospice tries to do
I,
something like
I
that?
think, yeah, hospice is getting there. I think there are now like death
Yeah.
doulas. Aren't there like death doulas now?
Yeah.
Doula.
That's Jenny.
Sounds like a Star Wars character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a medical oncologist by training.
Okay.
And spent about 25, 30 years doing that. And hospice hospice in my mind is right. It's more like ushering people out at this the gathering of the
Hmm.
tribe, family, and all that. It's
Let me put you on a morphine drip and let you
yeah,
waste away.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Comfort measures, right?
Oh, and that's what you were saying. They drag out the dying process.
Yeah. You keep people alive longer, but really you just keep people dying longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chemotherapy.
Yeah. Okay, let's not get into oncology.
Yeah, we're getting way off
Well,
topic. But it's interesting. It's very interesting to talk about these things with you guys.
So, I mean, and the way, getting back to how ancestors ate, that was clean eating, right? That was
Oh,
more meat and vegetables, unprocessed. Like, I feel like that's not a complicated lifestyle to choose. Uh,
no.
in my mind, I feel like people overcomplicate nutrition with rules and calories and crap. And in my head, I'm just like, look, if it doesn't die or go bad in 3 to 4 days, it shouldn't go in your body. What are your thoughts?
Right. Yeah, yeah. I think that I totally agree. I think people are making nutrition too complicated. Everyone is fighting over what people should eat. Let's eat keto, let's be carnivores, let's be vegans, let's do all this stuff. And they're all fighting with each other when really we need to get together and tell people what they shouldn't eat anymore, because that if we can get most people to stop eating what they shouldn't eat, the battle is mostly won. So yeah, of course, hunter gatherers ate whole foods. They processed foods to make them digestible, or they cooked them or ground them and stuff, but they still ate the entire food. They ate the skin, they ate the seeds, they ate if we're talking about animals, they ate connective tissue, they ate the organs. And so they I know, right?
Waste not, want not, I guess, but I can't get there.
I know. Well, because we're not used to it. Weren't raised. We eat muscle meat. That's all we ever eat. So we're not used to it. There are other cultures that it's their delicacies and they eat them. But the other thing is, a lot of these things, there is no our ancestors had honey occasionally. It was a very big treat, but it was a really hard resource to get to. Some places had like maple syrup and things like that, but there was no refined sugar. And in no animal's history there's there a precedent where they evolved with that much processed refined sugar in their diet. I think we went from 4 pounds of sugar a year per American in the 1700s to like 150 to 200 pounds of sugar a year now, that's just mind blowing. Whatever our bodies have not evolved to handle, our bodies have had maybe 100, 200 years to start figuring out how to deal with this sugar that's in our high blood sugar all the time. And it's not adapting. This is the diseases of modernity.
Diabetes, cardiovascular disease,
Yeah. Yeah.
All linked to sugar.
all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also hunter gatherers never ate, artificial things. There was nothing artificial, no
Right.
artificial sweeteners, colors, flavors, preservatives. Like you said, if it's not decaying or going bad, don't eat it, because our bodies don't know what to do with it. Also, trans fats, like that's a whole different kind of fat that our bodies never encountered before. So eating whole foods and, not eating processed foods, I think that's the biggest takeaway message, because I
Well,
think after that, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say it's so simple. When you go to the grocery store, even the grocery stores make it really easy for you because most of those fresh foods and what do you call the butcher dude?
The
And it's on
deli.
the yeah, it's on the outside.
Yeah.
You just don't go down the aisles where things that never go bad live, then A, you're saving money, and B, you're getting closer to making smarter
Mhm.
nutritional choices.
Yeah. And then I think after that, our ancestors lived in so many different environments, right? They're Inuit who lived in the Arctic, and they ate mostly animal products. They ate protein and fat. So 95% protein and fat, maybe 5% plants, carbohydrates. And they adapted. Their bodies could handle that. But on the other side of the spectrum, in the rainforest, probably they would eat 65 to 70% carbohydrates, fruit, lots and lots of fruit, and maybe only 30% animal proteins. So people who are saying like, oh, there's only one paleo diet and this is what it is. The paleo diet is actually averages, whereas the individual groups had very different ratios of the macronutrients. And so, what I think, once somebody stops eating the bad stuff, then they can figure out what makes them feel best. Because I think everybody's a little different in terms of their genetic history. And I'm sure you guys have heard of Nutrigenomics, which is a very new kind of field of research, which might be fascinating to figure out for when they start figuring out some things. So you'd be able to like give yourself a genetic profile of the things that you are best suited to eat.
We're actually doing
Yeah, we have been doing that.
Oh, cool.
I did one of those tests on myself, and I got to tell you, I was like, Trip, you got to look at this. I don't know what any of this means. It was a complicated report. I'm still trying to decipher all of that. But yeah, we do the Nutrigenomics and the
No worries, dear. No worries. We're having the gizzards tonight.
oh God, no, no, no.
How about some liver and onions?
Yeah. So so that information is very comprehensive even. So we do that, and then we have like the genetic.
We do well, at the limit we do whole genome sequencing
Mhm.
and adapt to the patient, specifically an N of one. So
So
there,
you're right, people are different and
yeah,
have different tolerances and benefits from different things. So
So
it's not appropriate to say paleo is this way, and if you don't
yeah, and I
do
hope rather than making it more confusing, people will be like, "Well, what the heck am I supposed to eat then?" Well, get rid of the bad stuff, and then you can see what foods make you feel the best.
right,
And use yourself and how you feel as your guide. You don't have to, I'm going to do the, I'm a carnivore. But if you're not feeling good, even somebody tells you this is the best optimal way to eat, but it's not working for you, leave it. Try something different.
and if your gout acts up, then you know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
okay. I wanted to ask about because I really like this statement you had in the present moment
Mm,
mindset as the ancestors had. So let's talk
mhm.
about
Okay. I think as we were evolving, it was a very highly developed survival trait to be able to be in the moment and to know what's going on around you in the moment, right? Is that breaking branch somebody I know, or is it a tiger? I feel the weather changing. I need to get home. They're in the moment. They are taking in their environment through all of their senses and acting on what they receive and acting on what their brains are telling them this is what's going to happen. Where I think nowadays we are so not in touch with the present moment. We are always living in some other
either the past
dimension.
or
Dimension, yeah.
having what is it? Anxiety, worrying about the future, and
Hmm.
depression,
Yeah.
overthinking.
And if you think about it, so their concept of time was so different than ours because someone coined the term a delayed return economy. Oh, sorry, immediate return economy. So what they would do is they would go like, "Oh, I'm hungry. Let's go get some food." And so they'd go get food and then they'd eat it. They got their reward or they got their return on their efforts immediately. So they were able to always just meet their needs when they needed to have it. So if you go back to sleep, they're tired, they're going to go to sleep. They didn't have things like Netflix to override our body's signals to that we're tired, we should go to bed. But when agriculture came along, now we went from an immediate return economy to a delayed return economy. And that is more you plant the seeds, you wait 8 months, and then you harvest. So now we're all of a sudden we're being very future oriented. We're going to get a paycheck at the end of this cycle. We're going to harvest our food at the end of this cycle. And I think just naturally we started not living in the present moment. We started living more in the future. And nowadays, with so many distractions and our health isn't good, our mental health isn't good. So we're prone to be more in the future, in the past with anxiety or depression or whatever. And that's why meditation and mindfulness is such a powerful tool because it helps us figure out how to return back to this present moment where everything's okay right now. I'm in tune with my body, I'm in tune with what's going on around me, and you can get out of that fight or flight at least for a little while before you go back into the ring.
Yeah. I mean, I know I historically am always future focused, and part of me worries that if I'm too in the now, then the things that need to be done in the future just won't happen. It's a
Well,
manifestation.
yeah, so I think there's studies where if you are in the present moment, it doesn't mean you don't plan for the future. You just don't live in the future. But if you're in the present moment, you have the mindset and you're not in this fight or flight, so you can actually focus better and see what your priorities are. You can plan better. You can say, okay, well, what needs to be done first, rather than being like, oh my gosh, what I
What
need to
if?
do so many things, I don't know what to do, and then you just don't do anything because you're overwhelmed.
Right.
I think Mark Twain said it best. I've had a lot of worries in my life. A couple of them were real.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We make up a lot of our own reality in our heads,
Yeah,
for
we do.
sure.
So mindful, so you said meditation. So steps somebody can do, very simple steps. I think people also overcomplicate meditation as well. It doesn't have to be that complicated, people.
And when I started meditation, I couldn't get out of my own head that I was doing it wrong,
Right.
that this isn't working. Why aren't I feeling great right now? But it takes practice. And there are still times when I don't have a good meditation. It happens.
Well,
It's not
I
gonna be
guess
perfect
what's really
every day.
important in that scenario is not to judge yourself.
Right.
Like you can't get it wrong, you know?
Exactly.
Some of the tools that I find very helpful, like I like to do the HZ, the Hertz. Like YouTube has a huge library of binaural beats.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
Yeah, I love to put those on. Those are very helpful for just setting the mood and helping you be in the present
Right, it
moment and
takes you out of
focusing.
that, it takes you out of the beta zone that which is our waking interaction zone, and it puts you in either a lower wave frequency, and basically you get you down to theta or delta, and that monkey brain that I call it, the monkey
Mhm,
brain is squashed, and you can remain without thinking about what if.
mhm,
Well, or instead of saying, what if, gratitude is also a
mm.
great way to be present. You can't be grateful and in a state of anxiety at the same time.
Yeah.
This is very true. Well, and talking about that sound, think about people whose cultures are have meditation in them. The Buddhist monks, they have this tone that they do, or people who use Om or mantras and stuff. Those are all trying to evoke that same physiological reaction, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my go-to is all is well. And I
Hmm,
repeat
mhm.
it on the in breath and the out breath until I really feel like all is well, or I've passed out and gone to sleep. So,
Yeah.
tips and tools. What else? What is one thing that you would like the listener to know?
I think, well, when I started this project, it was kind of this blank sheet, this blank slate with this outline. And I started getting really overwhelmed and really judgmental of myself of all the things I was doing wrong, right? Because, like I was saying at the beginning, you're reading along and you're like, we don't do that anymore. We don't do that anymore. And so, what I found to be really helpful is take these small, at the end of every section, we have these just like small actionable things that people can do. And rather than take it all on at once, you need to do little bits at a time. What resonates with you the most? What area are you struggling with the most? It could just be, okay, I'm not going to eat any processed food today. Let's try it just for a day. Or for this week, I'm going to get up every morning and I'm going to walk and then I'm going to see how I feel. And what I found, um, once I was able to get over that judgment and start actually doing these things, because I learned so much about my own health and well-being in this whole process. It was just amazing. You start to feel better. And then when you start to feel better, you're like, I want to feel even more. I want to feel even better. So what can I do next? And then when you're not so tired all the time, going to the gym doesn't feel like a burden. When you know that if you eat that much ice cream before you go to bed, you're going to feel kind of hungover the next day. So just don't feel overwhelmed, because modernity, this is why we're in fight or flight all the time. We're stimulated all the time. We just have so much coming at us. We're overwhelmed all the time. So don't let your health and well-being be something that overwhelms you. Just take it one step at a time and do what feels right for you in the moment.
Cool. I like it. Okay, and one more time, where can they find the book? And then where can they find more about you and Luke?
Okay. Yeah, so we have a website. It's www.ontheoriginofbeing.com. Those are also our Facebook and Instagram handles are at On the Origin of Being. Feel like I feel like Instagram, I'm gravitating towards Instagram as my favorite
Yeah.
place to interact. But I also have Luke and I both also have LinkedIn profiles. So we do some things there too. But our website's probably the best place to start. It has links to all of those things. It has excerpts from the book. It has a place to order. We have a little video. We have our biographies on there. So I think that's probably the best place to start.
Cool. And listener, as always, I will put those somewhere in the notes so you can find them later, now, or whatever you want to do. Jenny, thank you so much. That was so informational. I'm kind of thinking your book probably needs to be a textbook and be introduced to
Ooh,
curriculum in schools. It sounds like a wealth of information.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I would be a good foundation starter for our patients for sure. As we integrate all these things in and get the results we do, I mean, that is a foundational kind of aspect and perspective they need.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really changed my life. So both writing the book and going through the whole process of publishing, but also learning about all this stuff and actually applying it to my own life completely changed the trajectory of my life. So I mean, it works.
Oh,
Amazing stuff. Thank you.
Thanks.
yeah. Well,
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
yeah, it has been. Well, listener, I hope you found this educational, informational, somewhat entertaining. And until next time.
Thanks for subscribing to Your Infinite Health. I'm Dr. Tripp.
And I'm Lene. Until next time, feel it, look it, and live it.